You're watching the Adventist Asia Podcast, the official podcast of the Southern Asia Pacific Division headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
And the Lord said, I've set you apart.
Now we have a church in that care group.
We're bringing you inspirational stories and insightful interviews from across our diverse region. Hear from our church leaders, mission pioneers, and everyday believers as they share their journeys of faith and service.
In the process, she was baptized.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X for updates and behind-the-scene glimpses. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and YouTube and never miss an episode. Welcome to the Adventist Asia Podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Pastor Mamerto Guingging, Human Resource Director and Associate Executive Secretary of the Adventist Church in the Southern Asia Pacific Division. Pastor Mamerto is a respected leader who has played key roles in development and implementation of the bifurcation of many regional church headquarters here in our region. He's also deeply passionate about the mission of the church and its continual growth in this important region. We're excited to hear his insights and perspectives on mission, leadership, and the future of the Adventist Church in the Southern Asia Pacific. Let's welcome Pastor Mamerto.
I'm so tense right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not spontaneous.
What?
I'm not like
What's that fear,
the others.
Pastor? What's that fear like?
Well, I'm a very structured person.
Okay.
So I don't like surprises.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you see me up front, that means that I had to spend longer time preparing for it. And,
Yeah. Yeah. I see you with the list. I mean, I can understand. Even I don't like to go up on stage like, what's going to be my end? Like, I need to know what's my ending thought. Sometimes, Tony, come up here and speak. Oh boy. I can't, Pastor. There's sometimes like I'll brave it and like, Lord, just fix my ending. I don't know where this is going. Pastor, the first time I met you was when Pastor Catolico brought me to SPUC. And there was like a training with Ati Gay, and you were the comms director there, right?
Yes, you were there. That was also my first time to see you.
Really? Yeah.
You remember we went up in the mountain?
Yes,
resort,
yes,
and we took our dinner there.
Yes, that's what I remember. And so,
You and Bong
Junbao.
and Junbao.
Oh, Junbao was there?
Junbao was there, yeah. I remember. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yes. Oh, don't say that on the camera, Pastor. Pastor, because I don't know that much of your past, can you share with me, or just what's your background, where you're from, family?
I was born in Oroquieta City. Oh, that is the capital city of Misamis Occidental Province. So, yeah. Oroquieta is actually, the name Oroquieta comes from the name Oro means gold and Kita means find. So we found gold. So when you meet someone from Oroquieta and you have a friend from Oroquieta, you found a golden friendship there.
Okay. Oroquieta.
Oroquieta.
I have a feeling I've been in that area. You have a lot of gold mines, right?
Not so much.
Not so much.
The
Okay.
It's probably the people that you're referring to.
Okay, all right. Because a story came to my mind when visiting there in South Philippines.
It's an 8-hour drive from the Philippines, from Cagayan de Oro.
Yeah.
So it's a far place.
Okay. But the name just sounds familiar to me. So you were raised there, Pastor. Was that into an Adventist family, or did you got introduced to the Adventist faith?
My mother was introduced into the Adventist faith when she was still young. She, along with her sister, their assignment was to go down the river to wash the laundry every Saturday. That was their assignment. So they would go down the river to wash the laundry, and the road going to the river, down the river, they had to pass by a Seventh-day Adventist church.
Okay.
And so whenever they passed by a Seventh-day Adventist church, every Saturday they would hear beautiful music. So one day, her sister, Corazon, my mom was Luz. Her sister, Corazon, said, Luz, why don't we just drop by for a very short while, just to listen to their beautiful music? That was their big mistake.
Big
Because
mistake.
of that, they became Seventh-day Adventist
Okay.
because of the power of music.
Wow.
So I grew up with my mother going to the church. I have not had the privilege of going to the church with the entire family. My father, I don't recall seeing my father go to the church. So it's only my mother. And so I grew up in that church, small church. And so eventually I became a pastor. And I was the one who baptized my father.
Oh, wow.
Like 3 months before he passed away,
Mm.
I was the one who baptized my father.
So, was this as you said, you were inspired to be a pastor? Was that because of your family, or because you went to an Adventist school?
So when I was young, I was enrolled in a primary school, Seventh-day Adventist
Mhm.
primary school. So it's only until grade 4 because it's primary. We had
Mhm.
one teacher teaching us all from
Everything.
kindergartens to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4. So my assignment when I was in the primary school was to, I remember I was 6 years old, 7 years old. We had to go to all the churches, visiting to all the churches and preaching, promoting Adventist education.
At the
That was my
in fourth
work.
grade? I mean,
No, grade 1,
in grade 1.
kindergarten, grade 1.
Really?
And so I went around preaching in English. And this Michael also who is a pastor now,
Mhm.
who is the stewardship director in the
Amazing.
union. He is the one translating me in Cebuan. So that was our work every Saturday. We visit all the churches in that province to promote Adventist education. So every time I go there, and our district pastor then, Pastor Asoy,
Mm.
not this our Sabbath school director,
Ah.
but Leonardo Asoy, who was president of
Yes.
our division.
Mhm.
Whenever he saw my mom, he would always say, "Ante, you remember when he grow up, your child will be a pastor."
Wow.
So
Prophecy.
it became
A reality.
it became a reality, and I
Mhm.
praise God for his calling, because after graduation in high school, I remember I graduated in a Catholic school,
Mm.
and I spent also my entire secondary high school in a Catholic school. You would say that the influence was strong there, not to be a pastor, not for me to take up the ministry, because after all, I s- I graduated my elementary and high school in a Catholic school.
Mm.
But then after graduation, there is this, like question, what would I want to be when I go to college?
Mhm.
And then I remember that voice, the voice, Ante, when he grows up, your son will be a pastor. So I remember, but then I did not pay attention to that.
Mhm.
It was my relative who invited me to go to Mountain View College. I did not know what course to take, but when I got there in Mountain View College, suddenly all these, my relative and his close friends, I don't know for what reason, they were not accepted in Mountain View College. So I was left alone in the room. And so the dean came to visit me in my room in the dormitory one day, and he said, because you have no roommates, I'm going to put some students here. So all of them were theology students. So so I was introduced to them, and all of them are pastors now. Some are presidents in the
Mhm.
conferences and missions. So so the next day when I enrolled with them, I told the registrar I'm going to take up theology because all my roommates are into the ministry. So that's how
That's
I
the
became a
story.
minister.
No, I mean, I think that's really interesting, and funny, because it's like the Lord put you in the right place to be influenced by the right people at the right time.
I praise God for His leading.
Yeah. Did you ever imagine, Pastor, that yes, you worked to become a pastor, but did you ever imagine that you would be a leader for our church?
No, I never imagined to be a leader of the church, because when you this should be a like a thought of reflection to all those who are aspiring to become pastors. You don't aspire to become leaders. No? You just felt the call to become a pastor, a minister. And so there is no course to be a leader, just a course to be a minister of God. So when God calls you, your thought, your heart is into it, into the ministry, just about winning souls for Jesus. That is the only agenda you have. And well, thankfully, the Lord, I should say thankfully, but no thanks, because leadership is a different ball game. It's a different calling, but being a minister is a different calling. That imagine you are involved in the work of the Lord, in the saving of people, and knowing that the time is, His coming is soon to happen. That you need to invest all your energy, all your time, all your effort to win precious souls for Jesus.
Yeah. As I'm hearing it from you, Pastor, you say that there's this type of balance that you have to play. There is that leadership role, and then there's your let's say that your core of being a pastor, and you have to choose being the pastor as the priority.
That is the priority. Um, God calls you to be a pastor, like God calls you to be in this work. So God has His calling to all of us. To me, whenever I'm asked about my vocation, see, this term vocation is not an Adventist term, but whenever God calls me about my vocation, I always refer to myself as a pastor. I like to be addressed as a pastor. So, um, other than being called to be a father, a husband, and a pastor. So these are three things that I don't confuse with God's calling. I am a husband to my wife, a father to my son, and a pastor to the church.
Man, this all now, funneling down to what you do today for our church. You have primarily two major functions that you do for us here. Not only for this building, but of course, leading the regional church. You handle us within our human resources. You are our HR, and you are also the associate secretary. With all this experience that you've had prior to becoming a leader here, what is the context of the HR department and the role that you play and the leadership that you do there? What is that?
The human resource is the most important resource of the church, because we're dealing with humans.
I think so, right?
Yeah. And I must say that the human resource is the most important resource in the church, because these are the men and women involved in the actual mission of the church. So lives are changed, and these men are the one functioning and the one. See, my work is, how do I express this one? Two things. In the associate secretary, I'm dealing with policies of the church, because that is basically my work. Writing the policy, improving the policy, and looking into the policy, and trying to make sure that the policy is very well implemented. That's the policy side of my work. That's the side of my work that's involved in the policy. But the other side of my work is the human resource, which is actually the one actualizing the policy. So we have the policy on one hand, and the one who actualize the policy are the people, especially those who are employed in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, especially in the Southern Asia Pacific Division.
From how you're explaining it to me, Pastor, there is this, there are some challenges in this, upholding the policy on one side, and the other side, or organizing the policy, and the other side implementing this policy. With your this past couple of years of leading us in HR, what are some of those challenges that you've had to deal with when working both with people and dealing with the policies at the same time?
I have a very interesting work, Tony. Uh, I remember I sat beside the governor of our province and we had this interesting conversation. Our governor happened to be a professor in the university, and he said that uh, his expertise is to teach human behavior in organization. And according to him, he said, that's the easiest subject to teach. I don't even bring my syllabus or a textbook to teach that. But in the actual work, that's the most difficult because you're dealing with different personalities and you have to make adjustments. You have to put people in the right place. And you have to approach people in a way that will not offend them and that they will see the big picture in the work. Because there's nothing like putting the best talents in the best place so that a person is not, as they say, square peg in a round hole, or the other way around. So that is the challenge, actually, finding the right person, because everybody is gifted with talents, and the grace of God is sufficient enough to supply His church with outstanding talents like you and your team. There are so much talents here in SSD, but if you put people in the wrong place, then they will not be able to function well and serve the mission of the church.
That's an interesting point of view, Pastor. With that, when I also have discussion with people, when they ask me what I do, and I have to explain in the context that I work with media in the context of the Adventist Church, and they'll look at me and say, "So you're a pastor?" And I'll go, "Oh no, I'm not. That's just my profession." Is there some type of balance that we have or misconception that we have about working with our church, where you have to be a pastor to partake within, let's say, the broader mission of what the church is doing?
That's a very good question. When you are part of this movement, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, everyone is a worker. The spirit of prophecy tells us very clearly that every disciple, every true disciple born into the kingdom of God is a missionary. And so every Seventh-day Adventist member is a missionary and a worker. And so when you say worker, we can categorize them as all workers. But there is this special group of people we call denominationally employed worker. And that's us, okay? We are supported by the church. And so everybody is supporting the church in a way. We are supporting the church in a way. But there is a greater number of people, these members of the church, that is supporting the church through tithes and offerings. And we also give our tithes and offerings in a way. But then as a worker, there is this calling in us to give our full time, energy, and all that we have for the work of the church.
I see. It's more of the responsibility we have more responsibility per se in partaking in the mission of the church through the initiatives that we are implementing, because we're born into the kingdom. We are part of this movement. We all have a role to play in this. I see and know that, in here at our division, and even in most of our regional offices, we have our accountants, we have people who are secretaries, we have people, of course, our pastors, we have our technical crew, we have people who are even our drivers. We all have the same responsibility. Hey, ever thought about making a difference in Timor-Leste, Cambodia, Laos, and what about Vietnam or Indonesia? With the Adventist Volunteer Services, you can. Whether you're a teacher, a doctor, or even a flight operations manager, yes, that's a real assignment. There's a place for you to serve. From local communities to international missions, Adventist Volunteer Services lets you use your skills to make an impact, short-term or long-term. There's an assignment waiting for you. Ready to step out in faith? Search SSD Volunteers on Instagram and Facebook and find the perfect opportunity to serve. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
We have different responsibilities, but we are all part of this movement. When this church was organized in 1860, they faced these issues, actually, these questions. What are we going to do? Are we going to employ people? So how do we manage this? Because the membership is growing bigger and bigger each passing year. And so then it came to a point that the church has to organize to make representation in the community, and also to be able to engage in the business of the church officially. Like, we have to have a legal entity and so on and so forth, all these things. And so then the church started employing people. And now the church has gone so big, especially in our division, where we have 8,500 churches. And then we have 3,800 companies. Imagine. And then we have 1.8 million in membership. That's a big number, actually. And so it takes a lot of people, support people, to give their full time to the work. So there are those who are called to be pastors, leaders of the church, teachers, doctors, those in the technical work, like your work, in the communication. And there are those who are serving as accountants in the church. The thing about our church is that when we are employed in the church, we are not allowed to engage in other works. We have to give full time, just like the same picture in the Old Testament, where people who are involved in the work of the temple, they have to give full time. They do not even receive any share in the inheritance of, in the Old Testament. That's what you read. All these people who are employed in the church, in the temple, they do not receive any inheritance. So for us, that can be translated as something that when we are employed in the church, we need to give our very best, our full-time work, and all our energy should be given to the work of the church.
I see that there's a broader perspective to this human resource. I mean, those who are working within our church. Just because, if, as you stated, all the churches that we have are companies, hospitals, schools, that takes a lot of talent and a lot of manpower to do that. And I think, me being one of the byproducts of our schools, I seen the effort and the commitment. Like you said, there's no sideline. I know that the people who had to deal with me and teach me, they put their heart in it because they could be elsewhere. The other aspect that I'm looking at, Pastor, is the mission work itself. We have volunteers. How do volunteers play a role within, say, the structure and the mission of our church?
To begin with, I would like to emphasize that the church was organized for mission. It was all voluntary work to begin with, this church. And so it is wrong to say that the mission of the church should be carried only by the denominational workers, because they cannot. Because as I go around the territory in SSD, even outside of our territory in the division, you would get the sense that God is working far more than what we are working. God is doing the bigger part of the work than our work, through people, because God always works through people, through His church. The spirit of prophecy tells us that the church is God's appointed agency for the salvation of people. This was organized for service, and its mission, only mission, is to win people for Jesus Christ, to prepare them for His coming. And so what is then the role of the church, the structure of the church, the leadership? Let me emphasize that. The leadership of the church is so designed in order to prepare people to be more effective in the mission work.
Mhm.
So that is our responsibility as a church. We prepare people, we train people, we equip people, we 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 train them to develop the skills to be able to effectively carry the gospel
Mhm.
to the people.
Yeah.
But but the work, it should not be limited only to the denominationally employed people. The work should be to the men and women comprising the membership of the church. They are the ones doing the missionary work. They are the ones reaching out to the people, because they are the ones who will finish the work.
Mhm.
It's the church, not the employees of the church.
Yeah. Pastor, I was hearing part of your words earlier, and it felt like maybe you've had an experience in the field, or you saw a story in the field that where you saw Jesus working in the mission field with maybe volunteers or with a missionary. Is there something in your recent travels that you could share with us that bring inspiration of God's leading or Jesus leading in the lives of the people?
One of the interesting stories I heard was in Myanmar. There was this village in Myanmar that has been observing the Sabbath for a long time. The church did not know about it. Only recently that they knew about it, that there is this group of people in one particular village in Myanmar who were observing the Sabbath, who were reading the Bible, and they learned about this one through other channel. Probably they heard it over the radio, or they read literature about this one, and so the village head of the village decided that the entire village should keep the Sabbath. They did not know about this one.
Mm.
And then when they learned later, the church later on learned, somebody reported to the church, they visited the church, they welcomed them. And so then these people also in the village learned that there is actually an organized church that share the same teaching with them. So that is why I told you earlier that God is doing the bigger part of the work.
Mhm. I see that, knowing that we're just part of the mission, but it's not the whole mission itself,
Correct.
right? And God is leading us here and there and in this mission together. I know, Pastor, there's people who would be listening in that maybe they're just starting or beginning to make a choice in their career in life and might have a calling to be a missionary or to be a denominational worker, whether at a local conference or looking at other places around the world to support the church. Would you have any advice for them or inspiration for them as they take this journey of finding a way to be part of the workforce of the church?
It's a privilege to serve the church, to work as a denominationally employed employee of the church. Uh, for those of you who are contemplating to be part of the workforce of the church, the Lord has a way to lead you. He has His own leading for you to become part of the church. The thing that unites us as a church is our mission. We can do mission even if you are not employed in the church. That I should emphasize. Okay, but if you are contemplating to become part of the workforce of the church, then I am sure that the Lord has His leading, perhaps through other people, through other leaders also, whom you may come in contact with, and then you will be introduced into the work. Some of you may apply, or those of you who may want to serve as a volunteer in the church. There are so many ways to do missionary work, whether you are employed by the church or not employed in the church. In fact, I consider it, Tony, as to me, it's a higher calling. If you are engaged in the mission of the church, even if you are not employed in the church, I always ask myself, Tony, I was a church pastor for a long time. and a district pastor. I handled, like, in one district, I handled 15 churches, and another district, I handled 11 churches. And I was a city church pastor for 8 years. I always ask myself, what a sacrifice to our church members to come Wednesday night, Friday night, and the whole day of Saturday. It takes a lot of commitment on their part and dedication to come and attend the midweek prayer meeting, to come the Vespers, to attend the Vespers prayer program. It takes a lot of commitment on their part. And I ask myself, what if I am not employed in the church? Would I come and participate and attend all these meetings? Maybe am I forced to attend because it is my responsibility and I receive a salary out of this one? There is a tendency for our church members to look at us and put us on a pedestal because we're pastors, because we are workers of the church. Whenever, even if you are not a pastor, when you go to
There's an
visit
expectation.
churches,
There's
there's this expectation that you are workers of the church, especially that you are a worker in the division. But to me, as a worker of the church, as a pastor of the church, I always view them highly. These men and women who are members of the church and are not employed by the church, I always respect them because they are the ones supporting the church on a voluntary basis. They do not receive anything from this one. So then I ask myself, if I am not employed by the church, if I'm not a pastor of the church, if I'm not receiving a salary from the church, would I still come and attend midweek prayer meeting? Would I still attend Vespers meeting and spend the whole day of Saturday? That is why my other work, Tony, aside from being, and I'm very serious about this work, aside from being a pastor, aside from being the associate executive secretary of the church and the human resource director, I am also the head elder of IS International Church. That is a different calling because I'm not receiving anything from it. And whenever there is a church board meeting, I have to attend. And whenever there are some things, concerns that the church needs to attend to, I need to go there.
Correct.
I need to be able to talk to the people and give my counsel, having experience being a church pastor. So this, because I always respect the church, and there's this feeling of me that I want to give back to the church. So maybe this is just a little way of showing my love to Jesus and my love to the church by accepting this appointment of being the head elder of the church, because when I look at the church, there's so much that needs to be accomplished in the church. By being available to serve the church is already a big fulfillment on my part.
Pastor, I am blessed to be working with you and under you, supporting you, and hearing your perspective on how you look at the church and how it also interacts and how you are our human resource director here and the associate executive secretary work that you do. I'm really glad that you've taken the time to sit down with me and share with me some of the things that are in your in your head, based on the questions that I asked you, or that we discussed together today. I'm pretty sure that maybe in the future, Pastor, there could be another take two where you could dive a little bit deeper, maybe into the philosophy of what it means to work with the church and in the church. But I know that you have other things to attend to. You have other appointments today. So I want to thank you for spending the time with us. There's a lot that I have gained from this experience with you at the round table, the Adventist Asia Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.